Well, now I want to turn to Jeff Jordan. And Jeff is doing something that I've asked him to do because I've never been successful with styrene. And he does such beautiful modeling with it that I asked him if he could find something that he'd like to build in styrene. And he found a beautiful store that he's going to build for us. So, Jeff, thanks so much for doing this. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how you do it.
Thank you, Jim. My pleasure. Let me figure out how to share my screen here and get my slides up. All right, I'm doing something wrong. I have the PowerPoint open on my computer. Phil, how do I get it to show?
Go right down to the bottom right, and there's a little
At the
screen.
bottom of Zoom, there's a screen button that says share screen. Click on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that's where I was.
Okay,
Get
go
Zoom back open. Get Zoom open.
I click share screen, and the stuff on share screen is not the stuff up on my computer screen.
So square the upper left screen, the upper left window in share screen, the upper left one. Click on it and then click the word share. Down at the bottom right. Upper left screen.
One that says screen?
Yeah, the one that says screen. Click on, double click on it or click on it and say share.
there you go.
And then
Now get your slide presentation up.
got it.
There you go. Now hit the slideshow button, which is down on the bottom right next to the right there.
There it
Click.
is.
And you are building in styrene.
Beautiful.
Yeah, how do I get rid of this window?
You
There we are. Okay.
can use the
Alrighty.
arrows. You can use the right and left arrows down on the bottom right of your keypad.
Got it. So, scratch building in styrene. And I came to build, I never thought I would be a scratch builder. I always saw people do scratch building and said I couldn't do that until the day arrived that there was a structure that I very much wanted for my model railroad. Nobody made a kit of it. And looking at materials, browsing around the hobby shop, looking at articles, and I saw this stuff about building in styrene, and that building in styrene is almost like building a plastic kit, except you make the parts for yourself. And it's really not that hard to do. And it's a great material to work with. It's easy to cut and shape without the risk of splitting. As Martin was just talking, and I guess we all have the experience of having to tape and work gently with wood to make sure it doesn't split. You can work with the finest styrene, 1/100th of an inch thick. It will never split. It could be cut, drilled, filed, sanded. It can be glued together with gel or liquid plastic cement. You'll see later on horrors that I actually use tester tube cement for some of my work because it's kind of like gel super glue. It doesn't, like the liquid stuff, set up instantly. It gives you a little time to adjust. And it's as close as, certainly any hobby shop, but also Michael's and whoever else, all has got, plastic cement. It's a great material to work with because it can be textured. You can add graining and distress to it, accepts many kinds of paint, and the ones that you can't use directly on it, if you prime it, then you can use it. And then depending on your layout room, you worry about your model's warping or humidity. The plastic is immune to humidity. It won't warp. It won't change over time. So with this series, I intend to show you how I've gotten into making structures in styrene, including making my own plans and using the styrene, how I make my own parts, assemble the parts, the techniques for working with and assembling the styrene, and finishing the model, which includes techniques on painting the styrene. I currently work in O scale, but this will work in any scale. And there's lots of styrene material out there. Evergreen styrene is my preferred medium. I have access to a shop that has the full evergreen styrene assortment available. And so you can pick up all their sheets, all their textured materials, all their strips. You can virtually build up a library of scale lumber in styrene. Alrighty. So talking about plans, my efforts have been to reproduce prototypes that are not available as kits. But if you have more of an architectural knack than I do, you could also design a building without any prototype at hand, just knowing how the structures go together and using those techniques. I prefer to go from photographs, my dimensions plans, model railroad magazines, have tons of structure plans. The first building I scratch built was an interlocking tower from plans in the Anthracite Railroad Historical Society's journal. They published, and they know a lot of their readers are modelers. They published their plan in HO scale. So you literally could take the dimensions right off of the plans in the magazine or a photocopy of the magazine and cut your pieces without even having to change dimensions. When I have no plans, such as the model that this series is based on, I actually got permission of the owner of the building and went out on the property with a tape measure and a very patient wife and measured the entire building, all of the dimensions, including using a carpenter's tape measure that permits you to get some height dimension well above what you can reach. I could even get some heights. Very little was left to estimation in this model. But sometimes when you, as you'll see a little further on in tonight's presentation, when I can't measure the building, there are a number of techniques from working from a photograph that you can make your plans and estimate the dimensions off of the photographs. Here's my prototype. This, now closed up, was once the St. David's Grocery, a couple of miles south of where I live in Fort Valley, Virginia, a characteristic southern building with the raised seam roof. And these are photographs I took at the time I was measuring on all four sides. Incidentally, I did not model the little building that's on the right. That was the post office. Apparently, in about 1970, the United States Post Office declared that you could no longer operate a post office from inside your grocery and that the post office had to be in a separate building. And so Miss Betty, who operated this grocery store, wanted to keep her postal business, and so had a post office built next door. That's 6 foot by 10 foot, reputedly at one time the smallest post office in the United States. But you can see the building itself also. It's basically a rectangular structure with a lean-to addition. So this is a nice, easy one to start from. Some of my others have been much more complicated structures. This is just a limited number of parts. We'll make the walls, the roof, and the porch. And I'll show you how I did all of that. Plans. So from those photographs, my dimensions, I just set out using a scale ruler because I drew this to O scale, the plain dimensions of the building. And for references, I was working, I also marked, so you can see, for example, on the left-hand side one there, that it shows that the main building is 20 feet wide. The annex is another 10 feet wide. You can see the height from the base of the wall to the top is 8 feet. The overall height is 13 feet. The door and window dimensions are all marked. The window dimensions and their distance from the edge will be very useful when it comes to laying out the walls in styrene. Incidentally, I chose on this model not to scratch build the windows and doors, with one exception you'll see a little later on. I did build one door from scratch, but I used in my parts box, I have a good supply of Grant Line and Tichy windows and doors that I've accumulated over time. And I sorted through that and found windows that, while not exactly identical to the ones, very close approximations. I was very happy with them. And therefore, the window openings on here are sized to the castings, not to the prototype. And so that was an adjustment I had to make, but it was easy. Again, I'm working in O scale. I have the O scale part at hand as I'm doing my drawings, and therefore it was easy to adjust the location dimensions of the various openings. One other thing you may have noticed, I can back up here, is the back wall. The upper right-hand picture is the back wall. If you look in the center there, it's pretty evident that at one time that was a back door, and then a modern window at some point was inserted instead of the back door. I chose to backdate the structure, and so I measured for and built the model with a door there, which I thought was a more natural arrangement when it was an operating business, rather than the modern, you can see metal storm window that's on there today. So that was the one adjustment. The other adjustment I made is the length of the building, the two bottom photographs. You can see those sidewalls, notwithstanding the sunflowers, is pretty plain. And as it turns out, it measures out, I think it was about 26 feet long. And the evergreen styrene sheets, the siding material, comes in sheets that are scale out at 6 inches, 24 feet long. And rather than try and splice the evergreen siding to reproduce a long and rather uninteresting blank wall, I chose to downsize the depth of the building just a little bit. And you'll see in the finished model, it really is hard to see that it is just a little bit shorter, but that economized on materials and avoided having to deal with splicing the siding. Let's talk about estimating dimensions. You may recall I've previously shown the finished model of this building, another grocery in Fort Valley, Virginia. The building no longer exists. These photographs were taken in 1979, apparently shortly after the business actually closed up, but before in another year or so it burnt down. Today that lot is completely vacant. There isn't a trace of the building, not even the foundation, nothing there. So all I had to work from is these two photographs. I actually used the community bulletin board and asked people if they had any other photographs or any other information about the building. And no additional construction material or information showed up. I did get comments from people who remembered going to the building when it was open. I got comments from people who said on the front there, just to the right of the front door, you see the little bench by the front door. They said, make sure you include that bench. I remember going in, buying ice cream and sitting by the front door. So include the bench. But scratch building this building then was a challenge because I had no dimensions to work from, but there are several clues that you can use on this side of the building to estimate dimensions. The first one is the lap siding. It was locally milled, and there are many buildings in my community that have very similar lap siding. And so it's possible to determine that that lap siding is probably somewhere between 4 and 4.5 inches of exposure on each one of those boards. Obviously it overlaps and there's a little bit more underneath, but you can count the courses literally, and I did tediously count 1, 2, 3, 4, how many courses there were all the way up to the top there, and gave me a very good estimate of the height of the building. Similarly, I could do that under this section and get the height of this wall, and the height of this wall, and the height of this wall, and they're all different. The two lean-tos were added, as it turns out, at different times, and they are different sizes. After the building was finished, a gentleman in the community, he's 85 years old, told me that his father helped build this building, and that somewhere before 1945, he added this little addition on the left, which originally was a storage room, but ultimately became the community barber shop. And the barber actually used that little section, and people remembered having their hair cut in that little section. There's a lot of community good memories of this building, and that's why I built it and presented it to our local museum, is because somebody knew it. So a couple of more dimensions you got to try and get out of this. The other one is good cue is raised seam metal roofing. Raised seam metal roofing is manufactured to standard dimensions. But you'll notice that this building has two. That this side, they all look the same. And this side, you can see the same, presumably here up to the chimney, but then apparently it was re-roofed some point with a larger standing seam material. And I did a little research and found out that typically standing seam material back in the day came in 2 foot, 18-inch, and 12-inch sizes. And in this building, this is probably 12-inch, and these are probably 2 foot. And so that would give you the length of all of these sections. The one thing, and windows and doors. Again, windows and doors typically are manufactured to standard dimensions. And so this window, and you'll notice going around the building, this window, this window, this window are all the same. This one, for some reason, is larger. These are smaller, so it's not that easy, but using this window and estimating its dimensions, it's probably a 2 foot wide window. And then you can count the siding to estimate its height. So not only can you use it to size the window you should use, but you can almost use it as a little ruler to give you the estimate of the size of the wall that it's in. And you can see that this wall, for example, is just a little bit more than 3 times the window. The hard one was this one because of the acute angle. It was very hard to estimate how many times this window goes into this wall and where this unusual, because this is angled from here to here, doesn't come out to the corner, it's angled, how far out this came out in relation to the peak of the roof. And ultimately, I had to make some educated guesses. One of the things I did after I made those educated guesses, I took all the dimensions I had estimated and I built a cardboard model of the structure and took the cardstock, cut it to the sizes, and actually found that I had underestimated some of the sizes and that the building looked a little off. And so you could just cut some more cardboard pieces until it looks right. But those are the principal techniques. And some of it is just ultimately, does it look right? I understand now that there is such a thing as software that enables you to take a photograph, such as the one that I'm showing here, that is not square on, and that the software will enable you to turn the scene so that you can square it off. However, I haven't done that. I haven't seen that. But if you have access to that, and there was an article in Model Railroader where a fellow talked about doing it, more power to him on that. So materials and preparation. So I always start by collecting all the bits and pieces that I think I'm going to need to build. So it makes it even more like just building a plastic kit because everything's there. All the sides are there. You just have to make them. I really like the evergreen styrene, one, because it's readily available, not only hobby shops, but Michael's, Hobby Lobby, and others have some evergreen styrene, but Mainline Hobby Supply, which is not too terribly far from where I live, has a tremendous selection, pretty much the full line. And I go there with a shopping list and buy a supply of this stuff. And though I don't keep a big supply of the siding, I kind of buy that on a project as I go. The strip material, I have my own little plastic lumber yard. Over the years, I've accumulated many of these bags of the strip material. And so I have the equivalent of standard lumber sizes in plastic strip material. And one bag goes a long way. There's like 5 or 6 strips in there. And so you can get a lot of building, especially in HO scale, out of a single bag. And then door, windows, and chimneys. I've actually got 2 chimneys here. I wasn't quite sure which one I was going to use. This one came from Mainline Hobby Supply. This is one I had around from some previous project. Over here, Grant Line windows and doors that I had in my box. This is a Tichy window that I considered. Ultimately, I used these. I used this door, and I used, I think, these windows, but not these windows. And then this building also has a stone foundation. Go back, you can see it in this one too, but whoops, I think I overshot. There you go. So you can see the stone foundation. I wanted to do something that would replicate that stone foundation, though I built the building that it sits flat. It would enable me, if I wanted on the layout, to bury some of that stone foundation, but I made an allowance for the stone foundation. And over here is a brand of embossed plastic sheet. This one actually came off of eBay, which has got a stone effect in it. You can actually see here that it's pretty close to the actual building. And so that gave me everything I needed to get started. But the first thing I did before I cut a single piece of styrene is you take all of the sheets out and you wash them thoroughly. Apparently, in the process of manufacturing the evergreen sheet, they use some sort of mold release or other release agent on the plastic. It's very slick. It will literally cause paint to bead up. So you got to make sure, little soap and water, dish soap, little warm water, rinse it thoroughly before you start working, so that you can wash it while it's flat sheets and not try and wash your building after it's been put together. So that's as far as I intend to go tonight. And tune in next week and I will show you how I actually made the parts, made the walls, made the window openings, made the roof, made the porch, and so forth. So that's my presentation for tonight.
Anybody have any questions for Jeff? Well, that didn't seem too hard to me. I might be able to do
Well,
that.
that's the whole point is, I never regarded or thought I was going to be a scratch builder. It seemed far too intimidating. And that breaking it down into the individual parts, working with styrene, which is a easy material to work with. In the next stage, you'll see how easy it is to cut it, how easy it is to shape it, how easy it is to cut the openings into it. It really cuts down the intimidation factor. Pick an easy building, even a square building, sort of like what Martin started on tonight, and make it in styrene, and you'll find you could build it in an evening. It's remarkable. Make your own parts, make your own plastic kit. And then, with experience, you can get more and more elaborate, such as the other grocery that I showed you the photographs of. It's got all kinds of angles and walls going different ways and different slopes and so on and so forth. But it's all individual styrene sheet, lay out the parts, cut them out, glue them together. It's not magic. It's not rocket science. It's really very accessible. And I think people will find that if they can neatly assemble a plastic kit, it's not that big an additional step to make your own plastic parts and put them together.
I really do appreciate it. Thank you so very much, Jeff. See you
Thank
next
you.
week.
Yes, indeed.